Welcome to the Room 214 podcast. My name is Vinny Greco. My guests today are the NBP STEAM integrators, Ariel Jespersen and Taylor Niss. Ariel and Taylor are ultra-talented educators that are dynamic and passionate while modeling a love of learning and inquisitiveness for their students. While only in their first year in this role, they are already leaving an indelible mark on the NBP community by integrating the many disciplines of STEAM in creative ways, while at the same time providing new excitement for all of their course offerings. It is my great pleasure to have Ariel and Taylor on the show today. Ladies, welcome to the show.
Hi, Vinny.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Of course. So we have a lot to talk about that I'm super interested in knowing, but I have to start with kind of like a shout out for Ariel while playfully shaming Taylor for the talk about the cross-campus scooter situation, and could you discuss these STEAM scooters, their origins, and why Ariel will ride them and you will not, Taylor?
Okay, so I wear heels a lot, and so for me, I didn't want to have a big fall in front of the students, but I have to say Ariel is a lot cooler than I am because she rides this green scooter from the lower school to the middle school.
Now, I ride that scooter because I have to come back and forth an additional trip before Taylor does. But she's kind of calling me cool, but I know that she thinks it's highly uncool. She's laughing right now because she knows that's true. But it started in that we joked about having a scooter. Taylor found one in her parents' garage, brought it in for me, and it was a 2-child size, so I had to order a bigger one.
Gotcha. I think it's awesome. When you don't wear heels, maybe like one time, the two of you rolling together with me.
A debut of it, I'll let you know.
Thank you, because it's awesome, and the kids love it too. So we will get down to business. So STEAM is kind of like one of these buzzwords we hear a lot in education, and I think many teachers and parents think they know what it entails, but in general terms, could you discuss what STEAM really means and why the push for it was so necessary?
Yeah, so that acronym STEAM stands for Science, Tech, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics. But what we really want everyone to understand is that it's not a curriculum, but it's an approach to learning, it's an approach to education. So we see STEAM as being highly interdisciplinary and something that celebrates creation and innovation.
Yeah, and I would say there was a push for it because we want to prepare students for jobs that have not been created yet and kind of show students how they can use various subjects in interdisciplinary ways.
Okay.
So creating and innovating are really important for it. And when I think STEAM, I think a holistic approach. So if you're creating and innovating in history, you're thinking about how can I use technology in a transformative way.
Gotcha.
Whether it is a podcast or a student remixing historical videos to make something original, an original work that applies to whatever project they're doing, or the same thing in math. It's about breaking boundaries between those disciplines and just being really open-minded about what a history project can look like, how technology can be used in different classes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say we're no longer siloed within our subject areas. We're more integrated, and learning about how jobs of the future really do incorporate science, tech, engineering, arts, and math instead of just science or just math or just English.
The imagery of no longer being siloed really resonates with me. I think that's really neat. And that leads me into my next question, which is, I'm a novice at this, but I still see and am interested by all these opportunities for collaboration that teachers and students can have across the disciplines. So in what ways are these disciplines connected, and what specifically do you hope to do to connect those disciplines?
So Taylor mentioned the new jobs that are coming out, and now more than ever, and of course into the future, the disciplines are more connected than we realize, especially outside of education. Everyone has a similar image of education. You go from class to class, and so you start to build this knowledge that science is science, math is math. But when you look at what is emerging technology now, what are emerging companies, there are new discoveries that are happening because of science, because of tech. Every discovery that we have allows engineers to do more work, which then allows more new technologies to be discovered. So it's kind of this recursive cycle, or this iterative cycle, that progress begets progress.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I would also say it's important that when they're learning skills, they want to make sure that they're able to define a problem, design a solution, make observations, and ask questions in all of their classes, not just when they're in STEAM or when they're in tech.
So I hear the theme of like discovery and solving problems, which I think absolutely applies across the board, and we're going to talk about that at a greater length here. So at MVP, we have a ton to offer in the way of STEAM programming and courses. What different STEAM-specific course offerings are you teaching, and how does what you do in the lower school differ than like what we would do in the middle school?
So I teach the middle school coding elective, and Ariel and I co-teach the robotics elective, and Ariel teaches the STEAM explorations elective. And then in the lower school, we divided and conquered, and I teach first grade, third grade, and fifth grade, and Ariel does kindergarten, second, and fourth grade.
And we're really excited for this new stuff. Like, I'm super jazzed about our STEAM explorations elective in that we have these 2 to 3 week explos, and we can do anything. So we started by doing an explo on curiosity. It was just called the Curiosity Challenge, and students were asked to measure, what are you curious about? What are NB students curious about? And then from that, we moved into learning about a specific technology, and now we're in an expo on costume design, and then moving into one.
What?
Yeah, so we also have this connection with MIT, and one of the MIT challenges is extreme exposure. It's about exploring extreme environments with imaging tools. So we're able to break that open and ask students to pick an extreme environment, research it, learn about it, develop a costume that would allow them to explore it safely, and then we'll move into designing an imaging tool to further explore that environment. So we brought out the sewing machine today.
I'm blown away. I'm absolutely blown away. So, and I think like this is even, as a teacher, I'm like learning that there's just and I love the word explo. Like, I want to be in your class really badly. Since you both share in the duties of implementing this approach, there must be so much planning that goes on in concert with one another. So what does that planning look like? How often do you plan together? Is there times you are planning separately? Discuss how you collaborate.
So the one thing that teachers always want is they want more time, and I can definitely say we would love more time, but we use each other to bounce ideas off one another. Finding time is the hardest part, but we do collaborate with the lower school teachers and the middle school teachers. We started in the middle school with collaborating with the science and math teachers specifically.
And we have a text chain going that's just throughout the day about supplies, about ideas, about things we've seen on Twitter or through other teachers that may be a good fit for whatever we're doing, whether it's a middle school elective or a lower school class. And then we try to circle back and have kind of broader conversations about like, ooh, are we on track with our vision for the program? How are we planning curriculum? What do we need to do to make sure that by the end of this year, we are confident to say that we accomplished what we're here to do? Is there
a specific, for these courses, are there specific things you have to do, or are you like the authors and you kind of have the final say as to like, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to see where this takes us? Like, what kind of latitude do you have in each course as far as planning is concerned? Like, is there something you're following and adapting, or are there things that you really just wanted to cover and they fit kind of in each course?
I think this is probably the biggest difference between divisions, in that in middle school we are the authors of these electives. STEAM Explos is just whatever we want it to be, where the wind takes us. We're doing biomedical engineering next because we connected with a Skype scientist who's a biomedical engineer. So that's the best fit for us. Whereas in lower school, we're really beholden to a lot more people, and we have to respect what they're doing in their classrooms. The lower school model is that we are integrating STEAM with what they're doing in their classrooms and making it a really authentic and relevant learning experience. So we need to constantly be checking in with those grade level teams, where they're headed in social studies or English, or what stories they're about to read, so that we can really design something that makes sense for them to be coming into the STEAM lab and working on, and that they can take back, and none of it seems disconnected.
I would say for the lower school, we tie a lot of our standards to NGSS or ISTE standards. That way we do align with curriculum that's being taught in the classroom as well.
So this is like you're throwing a lot at me, and I'm just like, I want to be a student really badly now in your classes. What, like, given your expertise and the plans that you've already come up with, what are some of like your big macro goals in coordinating STEAM, and how will those goals impact the lower, middle, and even to the high school kids?
For me personally, one of my goals is I really want to have a vertically aligned curriculum, which means that when students are coming in kindergarten, they then follow a path or curricula that they have to go through all the way until they are seniors. But for me, I'm really focusing on kindergarten through 8th grade. And I also really want teachers to feel empowered to use STEAM in their classroom. I think a lot of teachers don't use it just because they're scared to use it, when we want to be the people who support them and empower them to use STEAM in the classroom.
And I would say some of our goals are soft goals. Just like you can have soft skills, we have some soft goals. Like, we want both students and teachers to feel that they're operating in a safe environment where they can take risks and they can fail and they can persist and they can troubleshoot. And sometimes it doesn't feel so good to be in such an open environment, but we want to shift this like collective consciousness of the school so that everyone is okay going into a lesson and saying, like, I don't really know what the outcome is going to be for this project, or that it could look 10 different ways for 10 different students, but that we don't feel scared to do that.
Yeah, and I'm even experiencing that now, like, you know, with the PBL unit that we're doing. And I was just saying to Kayla today about how, like, oh my God, there's so many things going on, and it's not as concrete as before. It's not like, well, you're going to do the formative and you take the quiz and we move on and you do it again and again. It's just like kind of taking a leap of faith and just willing to be creative and give the kids opportunities to think outside the box and be creative, and just we have to normalize that.
Absolutely. And when you're doing that, what you're ultimately telling the students is that I trust you. Yeah. You're giving them these opportunities to show who they are, to really create what they want to create, and you're not kind of stopping them before they even begin.
So you are both wearing matching shirts right now and say, make the future.
That's right.
And some of the conversation we just had, and those shirts remind me to ask, what do we as pedagogues really mean when we say 21st century skills, and what 21st century skills do you hope students get from your course offerings?
Okay, so if you're looking at a textbook definition, then 21st century skills would really be communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to infuse this into the classroom, into the lessons that are already being taught, and allowing STEAM to really take off with these 21st century skills.
So we don't have to throw away content that we're teaching necessarily. There's just ways to kind of refurbish and like you said, infuse, I like that term, in what we're already doing.
Yeah, and it's about just kind of opening your eyes, taking off the blinders, looking at things with a broader lens. And I would even push, like, some of the 21st century skills that we think of now are starting to be outdated, because if you look even further forward, right, our shirts say make the future. Our future is highly algorithmic, lots of computational thinking.
Say more, but like also say it more simply.
No problem.
Yeah.
Our students are growing up in a world that is dominated by algorithms. There are patterns that computers are recognizing to make our lives easier, faster, cheaper, better. And we can start to look at history through algorithms. Like, what are algorithms that allow political candidates to reach their audience, their target audience? Yeah. What are the algorithms that allow Amazon to get something to your door in 2 days? We learned this summer that it's not because Amazon has super fast shipping. It's because they start to track your behaviors, and they can predict Mr. Greco might order dog food. He tends to order dog food every 60 days. So we're going to make sure that this dog food is at the shipping facility closest to his house before he even orders, so that by the time you order, it can get to you in 2 days. But it wasn't.
How do I feel about this?
I don't know how you feel. It starts to feel a little big brothery. I don't even know if that's is that even an appropriate term, but it's more. So
so without feeling like Amazon is listening right now, how do we like? So like, but what can the kids? How are the kids going to take the algorithms and change their future and create and innovate using that kind of thinking.
So if we bring that down to the student level, it starts with talking to them about data and patterns and pattern recognition. Teachers have already been talking to students about data, but let's just shift it and say, well, now how is data being used? How can we collect data in different ways, whether it is facial recognition software or the cameras in your phone, or it can still be online and it can still be tables and surveys, but just pushing them to think about what are the implications now? What does that mean now? Not how was data used in 1970 to get people to start Earth Day,
right,
but just trying to look forward. And even asking students, what are you seeing? Like, what are trends that you're seeing? And then we can get them to think like algorithms. Algorithms are trends as well.
Sure. Wow. Trippy. All right. You were both veteran teachers and have rich experiences in the classroom, but what made you interested in teaching and loving science in the first place? Was there a teacher you had, experiences? Discuss what inspired you to kind of go down this professional path.
Okay, so growing up, I actually hated science, which is kind of funny because prior to being a STEAM integrator, I taught LPA middle school science for 2 years, but I think that's what made me want to be a teacher. It wasn't until college that I met a professor, Dr. Disler, and she really saw the potential in me to be able to use robotics and engineering in the classroom, and that kind of sparked a love for me to want to then do this.
That's really cool.
I was always a bit of a geek in school in that I liked doing schoolwork, and when I went to college, I thought I was going to go to med school afterwards. That was my life plan. I had set it since I was in about 3rd grade. And I felt like that's where my life was headed. And then I got to the point in college where I was just courageous enough to say, that's actually really not what I want to do. And if I wasn't worried about money, I'd be a teacher. And once I had the revelation that I'm actually not worried about money, I went back for teacher prep. And science was the natural fit, as that had been what I'd been learning for years. And then did student teaching actually in high school, and then found a position as a middle school teacher, and I'm now working in lower school and middle school. But the more that I've taught, the more I grow to love science. So I think just teaching a subject, you develop a deeper love for it because you're trying to pass that off to students.
Absolutely, 100%. What differences are there between when you are in the lower school for a certain amount of the day and then in the middle school for another part of the day? Are there similarities in like how you operate and how you treat the kids and then like how they perceive you? What's it like to go back and forth?
Lower school students are so sweet.
So cute.
That every time I have to describe students, that's the first descriptor that comes to the tip of my tongue. It's like, they're so sweet. And middle school students are just more, their brains are more developed, so there's a little more cleverness there and wit and some of the things where you can have deeper conversations. But I love lower school students' willingness to learn and just enthusiasm for learning.
No, I would agree with that. I think that because we're able to teach so many different students throughout the day, that we get to see different personalities. We also kind of get to see the growth within grade levels.
Oh, yeah.
And how they develop from the beginning of kindergarten, then to the end, and then what that looks like in first, second, and thereafter.
I think that's the coolest thing about you'll get to see them potentially over the course of many years, and just there's going to be a great sense of pride in that and seeing how far they come. In general terms, what are your favorite topics and items to teach or cover? And that could have been in the past. Moving forward, that'll be like a separate question. What are you most excited to possibly teach? But I'm interested to know what are your favorite things to have taught, and then what you haven't quite taught yet and you're going to be excited to teach.
I don't know that I have a favorite topic, but I really love taking a single subject, or let's say a topic. I like taking a single topic and like blowing it up. How deep does this wormhole go, or this rabbit hole? Like if I'm going to teach, in the past I've taught self-driving cars with an ESOL science class, which was awesome because we talked about how do self-driving cars work, and then we debated on the policies for self-driving cars, and then we had students start talking about what their policy would be. And then we have students use technology to make a self-driving car, and also Legos to build a city that the car is going to go through. And then I just really love looking at something through 10 different ways, or like, I really love looking at something and just going back at it, like, let's look at it from this angle, let's look at it from this angle. So for me, it's just like rabbit holes, really, really chasing a subject to see how far.
I would say my favorite things to teach are EV3 robotics and We Do 2.0. I just find that they tie in really well to the science and math concepts, and they also cover engineering and communication standards as well. So for me, I really enjoy teaching it. I have a background in robotics.
So talk a little bit more about like EV3 robotics.
Yeah, so EV3 robotics, that's the robot we use in our robotics elective, but I also think it ties in really well to science too, because I use it for force, motion, friction, gravity, to teach different concepts there as well.
Where do you start with robotics? Where does that begin, and then like how, and then where does it go, like in terms of this elective?
Okay, so I would say the biggest thing is first learning that you have to be able to program in order to do robotics. So what is programming, and understanding how something works in a sequence. And it really has a pattern of if, then, because. And that starts in the lower school when they're doing a hypothesis. If this occurs, then this will happen because of blank. So that's one of the things that I'm really pushing for this year, is starting to create different theories and thoughts on what could occur, and that will really help with coding and programming as well.
Awesome. So something I know we all put a premium on is building relationships with our students. It's very difficult to ask them to work their hardest or give their best without laying that groundwork. How do you go about building relationships with your students, and how does that differ with your lower school and middle school students?
Okay, so I find that it's really important to figure out what each student is really good at or has a knack for, and allow them to flourish with their strengths while also learning new things. So I let students know that it's an environment where mistakes are encouraged and that it's okay to have failures, and I think this happens both in the lower school and the middle school as well.
One of my go-tos is just using people's names as much as possible, so learning their names straight away, which has been harder in the lower school just because there's a lot of new faces, probably more so than in a normal school year, it feels like. But learning their names, saying hi to them in the hallways. If you come within 5 feet of me, we have to make eye contact. We have to say hello. If we're 10 feet away, like, let's wave. Let's just acknowledge each other's presence. And while I'm acknowledging someone in the hallway, that comes into the classroom as well. So thinking about how can you make each student feel seen, feel valued. If someone contributes to a discussion and you're kind of thinking like, oh, I don't know why they said that, you can still acknowledge that person's contribution and then ask if anyone else has something to add on to it or change. Like, talking to as many students as possible in a class period, whether it's in a discussion or one-on-one, just really circling around to everybody as much as possible.
And side note, I would say Ms. Jespersen is really good at learning the students' names. I think it was by day 2 or 3 that she knew over 200 names. So.
That's impressive. Like, sometimes when I'm still in the learning process, I have to be like, hey, buddy, like,
hey, friend.
Yeah, hey, exactly, because I'm just not super confident yet, so I don't want to get it wrong.
Of course. Yeah. And even when you get it wrong, like, showing that humility, though, of, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
I've done it. Yeah.
I've, of course, done that this year, but the kids will correct you, too. I think something different with the lower school is they're way quicker to correct you, whereas middle school students are a little more quiet, and they'll just be like, oh, they called me the wrong name, and they just brush it off. The lower school students will say, no, I'm this person, which has been humbling, but helpful.
My last question before I let you go today, what are you most excited about when you step back and think about all the STEAM program has to offer?
I think I'm most excited about being able to learn and grow along with the students. You know, part of being a teacher is that you don't know everything, and there's so much out there to still learn. So for example, right now I'm teaching a coding class, and I started to dive into HTML and some Java, and some of those aspects are a little bit new to me, so I'm really excited that I could learn alongside with the students.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm really looking forward to getting to know a greater number of teachers and kind of intimately understand what they do day to day, unit to unit, within a year. Because I got to know the middle school teachers really, really well and have just a love for what they do. And now I want to do that same thing with the lower school teachers. It's just going to feel more comfortable to collaborate and work together and really step up everything as a whole. And then once we get lower school and middle school, then it can ramp up to high school. And just there's so much opportunity and there's so much thoughtfulness behind the scenes right now. And the sooner we can bring everybody in on this, it's just going to be awesome.
Absolutely. That's really exciting. So that's all the time we have. I want to thank Ariel and Taylor for sitting down with me today. Your love and joy for teaching is so evident, and it's so refreshing and comforting to have colleagues that have that wonderful mindset. Next week, I'll sit down with Tammy Wipowitz, IB coordinator and assistant high school principal at North Broward Prep. We'll discuss all things International Baccalaureate and what opportunities obtaining an IB diploma gives our students. You can listen to the Room 214 podcast on SoundCloud or on Apple Podcasts. NBP students, if you're interested in creating your own podcast for the Eagles Podcast Network, shoot me an email or stop by Room 214. My name is Vinny Greco, wishing you peace and much love.